So, the big story this week isn't wild surprises, but more this sense that the world's just grinding along. Honestly, it feels like we're in a holding pattern, no sudden shocks, just this steady hum of underlying tension.
That's exactly the vibe. It's like everyone's bracing for something major, but instead, what matters is how all these little stress points keep wearing things down. I mean, you look at China, the US, Russia, none of them are making sharp moves right now, just refining their positions.
Yeah, and even with places like Nigeria or Brazil, the story isn't about sudden collapses. It's more about the slow buildup, the cost of living pressures, the trust deficit. Nothing explodes, but the cracks keep spreading.
And that's where the real risk is, isn't it? Not in a single headline event, but in all these slow leaks that can suddenly add up. Speaking of cracks showing, I've been watching the eurozone news closely this week.
Bulgaria officially joining the eurozone could have been a celebration of unity. But the timing is tricky. The EU gets a bigger monetary footprint, sure, but Bulgaria's political fragility gets imported right into the euro core.
And you can feel the mixed reactions. On one hand, it's a resilience boost for the EU, more members, more cohesion. But bringing in a country struggling with corruption and protests, that gives skeptics and even foreign adversaries a field day to question how robust the eurozone really is.
Exactly. The economic gains are real lower transaction costs, ECB safety net, but if people in Bulgaria don't see quick improvements, or if inflation anxieties spike, you risk more pushback than progress.
And that creates a new narrative battleground. Russia and China can point and say, see, the EU takes in unstable partners and calls it strength. But it's not just about geopolitics. There's real street-level frustration bubbling up, especially in low-trust societies like Bulgaria's.
That frustration actually ties into another front, the economic stresses that a lot of these countries are wrestling with right now.
If there's one thing that could light the fuse this year, it's economic pain. Inflation and the cost of living are what people really feel. Nigeria and Brazil are especially exposed, but honestly, even the US and Australia aren't immune.
That's what's so tense. So much of the risk is cumulative. Every small hike in food or energy prices chips away at people's patience. And with so many countries facing elections, that's a recipe for volatility if things tip the wrong way.
And the connections are global. A currency move in Europe can ripple into Nigeria's economy or Brazil's inflation narrative overnight. It doesn't help that Russia's locked out of the eurozone. Now they're doubling down on non-Western financial ties, making the global picture even more tangled.
And when everyday people don't trust their institutions to help, even routine government changes or policy tweaks can feel threatening. Which actually reminds me, did you see how security is ramping up in cities worldwide lately?
Yeah, it's hard to miss. Massive New Year's security in places like Sydney, New York, Lagos, and Moscow felt less like a response to specific threats and more like the new normal. Heavy policing, surveillance tech everywhere, it's just part of the backdrop now.
And that normalization is a double-edged sword. It probably reduces the risk of major attacks, but it quietly shifts the line between freedom and security. People seem willing to trade privacy for safety, but over time, that changes how society interacts with the state.
It also sets up new kinds of tension. Routine high-alert responses can make protests feel riskier or fuel debates over who exactly gets protected versus who's getting watched. And with this rolling fatigue from years of crises, people's trust in these systems keeps eroding.
Absolutely. And with social media amplifying every police action or protest, the narrative risks just keep growing, especially in an election-heavy year like 2026.
This year is wild. Dozens of national elections are lined up. It means any minor incident, even something routine, can be spun into a political weapon almost instantly. It's not just about ballots, it's about who controls the story.
Exactly. And information operations aren't some distant threat anymore. Russia, China, and the US are all actively shaping narratives defending their turf, but also trying to sway opinions abroad. And with social media as the main stage, things can escalate fast.
What's tricky is that the real action isn't always visible. Disinformation, micro-targeted campaigns, and strategic leaks can change an election's mood long before anyone casts a vote. It puts a premium on tracking not just what's true, but what's being believed.
And all this narrative wrestling happens against a backdrop of climate stress, legal reforms, and fragile economies. It's a reminder that in 2026, Even so-called quiet weeks are loaded with undercurrents.
So, as we head deeper into the year, our focus really has to be on the compounding risks, the economic grievances, narrative contests, and those small policy tweaks that could tip the balance in fragile places.
And it's about reading the signals hiding in plain sight, right? Not just the big headline events, but the incremental changes, new regulations on tech, subtle shifts in protests, even climate impacts on food prices. Any of these can set off bigger ripples.
The challenge is not to chase the next big bang story, but to spot where that slow erosion might suddenly give way. That means tracking sentiment, watching elections, and staying alert to how adversaries frame every move.
Let's keep tuning into those undercurrents because in a grind mode year, it's the subtle shifts that really matter.